You start breathing as a whole being. When you do that, here's the point. When you do that, hey everyone, welcome back to another video. Thanks for being here. I've got a little mic coming in the mail. I lost or broke my old one, so the sound quality is about to improve. So go ahead, if you haven't already, click that subscribe button. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for being here. I'm Val Mason. Let's get right into it today. Today we're going to talk about being able to hold and carry all parts of who you are. Wow. I mean, where do we begin with this topic? I mean, I guess we could begin at ground zero, which is the subconscious programming that we as humans have been programmed with for thousands of years around the paradigm of separation and egoic beliefs around right and wrong and good and bad. In terms of like, you have to behave a certain way in order to be socially accepted or acceptable or belonging to a tribe without being rejected. You don't speak out. Don't do anything that would draw attention to you. Don't rock the boat. Don't set any waves into motion that other people aren't going to like. All these really, really toxic beliefs that were programmed very, very early. I mean, as soon as we can begin understanding and receiving energy from our parents when we're toddlers or whoever our guardians are, we get reprimanded if we do something that they don't like. And then that just continues into school and into the workforce and it just snowballs. So it's a really, really deep belief that we have. And it just wreaks havoc on our psyche, on our lives. Because what winds up happening, let's just fast forward really quick. What winds up happening is we just harbor so much shame and so much guilt and so much frustration because we never voiced how we felt because we didn't want to scare people away, or we didn't want to make people uncomfortable, and we didn't want to face it ourselves. Look at that. How about that? We didn't want to face it ourselves. That right there, that's enough right there to show you how evil and toxic that belief is. The beliefs around like good and bad and what you should and shouldn't do. So what winds up happening is we begin collecting this garbage, this shame, this black soot, this weight. And whenever we do rage, or whenever we let it out, whenever our nervous system has to release it, because we're not regulated, because we don't have anyone that we can talk to that really understands the really deepest parts of ourselves, like we don't have the proper therapy and environment to get really deep down into the roots of our psyche. We need like a shaman, we need a mystic, we need someone that knows, that sees, that understands and loves unconditionally to really tap in to the healing power that's locked down at the base of that root. You got to tap in there to be able to release it and unlock it. Really good to have this information. Really important to be aware of, hey man, I'm full of layers. I've got depth. I have things that are so deep that it might take me with a machete going through the layers of the jungle like this to actually get to that jewel there hidden somewhere where I gotta go on a quest now to find it. And so we're not able to tap into it and release it and the proper way, in a safe environment, in a safe space. God, that's just so important. It's so important. And when you become that safe space for someone else, God, there's not a better feeling than that, okay? But because we don't have the proper treatment, proper therapy, we then kind of like sling our shit all around to our loved ones, our family, the ones that are closest to us, our kids maybe, whoever, and ourselves. And we have shame when we do that. We have shame that causes us to do it, and then when we do it, we have more shame. And so I'm talking about, you could be behind the steering wheel and be banging the wheel and cursing up a storm and just being absolutely miserable because nobody hears you, nobody sees you. You don't know how to properly communicate your emotions and how you feel because you don't have that stage set yet. And here's where we get to the part where you are going to set your own stage. Maybe your life is set up to the point where nobody would be able to understand you. Maybe you're a mystic. Maybe you've had many, many past lives. Maybe you have so much baggage and so much trauma and so much conflicting parts within you that aren't working together. Rather, they are working against each other. That you come to a point where you're at a loss and you don't know what to do. And you realize that all those parts are working against one another because you're not allowing yourself to be heard and be seen. And that all begins with just being able to get it out, being able to express yourself. And I'm not going to lie, if you have to do this on your own, it's going to push a whole bunch of people away. You're going to get unfollowers and you have people that ridicule you and don't understand you and just think you're a problem. They just want to sweep you under the rug, like the prison systems sweep other problems that manifest through human beings under the rug. And like that, okay, we don't have to worry about it anymore. Not going to work, never going to happen. When you abandon parts of yourself, and remember, we're all one. So whoever you sweep under the rug, you are abandoning a part of yourself. It's just the way it is. And until we grasp that and embody that and become that, like on a cellular level, when we start understanding that, then we're like, oh, okay, well, let's come up with a real solution then. But until we realize that, when we're still in lower levels of consciousness, operating in separation, we want to sweep a problem under the rug. Then it just, it grows, it festers, it just becomes something that is hard to contain and hard to control, and it'll take over your life. What you let slide today will crawl under your skin tonight and grow into poison tomorrow. That's why it's important that you're able to set your own stage to begin, getting it out. And again, you're going to have people that don't understand. But here's the beautiful part. Here's the point. When you start getting things out and you start getting feedback from people who do see you and understand you and love you unconditionally, and the people that just can't stand you, they think you're a problem, they want to sweep you under the rug, they block you, whatever, ridicule you, call you names. Through these different feedbacks, you begin to find who you are. And you're like, you see what different belief systems and behaviors, like unconsciously, subconsciously, like I'm not saying it's your fault, but you begin to see through the reflection of others where you are just out of alignment. It doesn't matter. It's just a fact. That's a fact. A stone cold hard fact that you're out of alignment. If your parts are working against each other. I'm not saying you're a bad person. I'm not saying you're unworthy. You are absolutely unconditionally worthy, unconditionally loved, unconditional light. You are law. You are the creator. But in your human body and in your soul's cosmic journey, you might have come to a place where you have a lot of imbalances. But it's so beautiful because that's your task. That's your gift. When in your life have you had a problem and you didn't know how you were going to figure it out, or you thought everything was lost, you felt hopeless? Little did you know that was the beginning of a solution. That was the beginning of a brighter day, of a higher version of yourself. So that's all it is. It's a gift. Anything that, and I'm telling you, believe you me, I know all too well the pain of loss, of grief, of separation, of despair, of feeling your heart outside of your body being taken from you. So I'm not saying that, it's all in your head or it's just a belief. we do experience immense trauma and grief as human beings, but there's deeper gifts in there. There's deeper truth. There's wholeness in that. You know, it's never, you never like fly into the sunset and become whole and then just continue going as a whole person who is always happy, always fulfilled. Like, that's just not the way that life works. You know, when you're a wise being, you know how to dance. You know that you're whole underneath all the fragments and all the broken pieces and missing parts and da-da-da-da, you know. And you can actually weave that into poetry. You can weave it into passion, but not let it suck you down a black hole where you're just like stuck in this like hopeless romantic state of I'm helpless. And you know, can you do both? Boom, back to the beginning of this video. Can you hold all of yourself? Can you openly express your emotions, openly express your experiences, openly display your rage and your feelings and your passion in a creative way? How can you turn it into art? How can you turn it into something that is going to water a seed of creativity and growth and inspire other people, as opposed to raging hidden and in shame and in the dark and beating yourself up? When you let go of the shame, when you start letting yourself be the flower that you are, the sparkly magical being that you are for the world to see, whether or not they understand it, you just know that you're expressing your truth. You become so attractive. You start feeling safer within your own self. You become magnetic. You start attracting other people who are ready to heal. It's just a win-win, you know? When you start opening up and accepting the parts of yourself, like deeply accepting them and breathing with them, like the parts that you always neglected and you always abandoned, but realized that you always had to go back and you know, retrieve that part of you. When you stop doing that, you're able to go further. You don't have to turn back so much anymore. You start breathing with those parts of you that you've always held shame around, and you feel them coming together. You start breathing as a whole being. When you do that, here's the point. When you do that, you start realizing the purpose of your life. You start realizing that that's occurring on larger scales, on a global scale. When you start realizing your role and power as a cosmic gardener, someone that's weaving a web that's impacting all of the universe, not just the earth, you want to breathe your breath into your ground. You want to nurture your ground with greater intention. You start taking better care of yourself. You realize what keeping your eyes open through the forest on the darkest night, you start seeing the benefits that came from you facing your fears. And then you just want nothing else you want nothing else for everyone else to experience that in themselves. And so you become a nurturer, a steward or stewardess of our planet and other human beings. But it all begins in yourself. So if you feel hopeless, if you feel helpless, if you feel all is lost and, you know, there's nothing you can do, oh, honey, that is just a belief. That's just that nasty little pesky belief eating away at your psyche that you need to get under control and take your power back. Now, I'm here telling you that you're in control. You have the power. So it's your responsibility now to reclaim that power. And on that path, you're going to lose people. People are going to ridicule you. They're going to call you names. You're going to be scared. You're going to be terrified. You're not going to know if you can actually do it. You're not going to know how you're going to do it. Can you get through this? Oh, it's going to get dark. But remember that it's always darkest before the dawn. We are never as lost or as found as we think we are. And that sun will always rise again. And you will rise with it better than before. And every time you rise a little bit better, you're able to love that past version a little bit harder. Thank you for liking today's video. Don't forget, subscribe to the channel and join the community to continue receiving guidance as you reclaim your divinity and step into your soul purpose at this pivotal time on the planet.